Hey, JD,
Yeah.
I got your book.
Okay.
And I just had one question for you.
Can I finish my remarks first?
Yeah, I just want to know if I could get a refund. I didn't like the book very much.
All right. There we go.
$16.99.
You're gonna go now.
$21 in Canada. It just wasn't that good. I didn't find the the main character wasn't very likable.
I remember driving down the road and kind of just like an offhanded comment, just like, "Oh, hey, look, JD Vance is having a rally," and we kind of like go past it, like not even thinking to pass it.
Ohio again?
We were just sightseeing.
Just sightseeing. We were on a sightseeing.
JD Vance has been getting called out and clowned since he was running for a Senate seat. And now that he's getting picked apart on the national stage, he's decided to fight back, hoping whoever VP Harris's running mate is will stumble out of the blocks and fall flat on their face, too.
A lot of rumor that's going to be this guy, Tim Walz, who's a governor from Minnesota. I don't know anything about him. He seems really angry. There's a lot of talk is going to be this guy, Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, who, I've seen a couple clips of him talking. He talks like Barack Obama. It's like if I did try to do a really bad impression of Barack Obama, that's what it would sound like, is this guy, Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. Yeah, go watch a clip of his and tell me if you agree with me.
Okay, considering I said the same thing about a week ago, the point about Shapiro sounding like Obama is valid.
You know how I know this? Because he's afraid to debate her now. Do you see that? She's a skilled debater and a courtroom prosecutor who knows how to make the case.
But I'll get to more of that in a second. First, why is JD Vance sitting like that? People complain about manspreading, which forces some guys to do it even more consciously to make a point, mostly that they think it asserts their dominance and their unwillingness to do better. But for someone like JD Vance, whose entire political career is manufactured to be someone that he isn't, he looks like he's practiced this with a manspreading coach or something that wouldn't even tell him that he's trying way too hard to pull it off. But anyways, he did mention Governor Shapiro.
J.D. Vance just said this about you, and these are his words, quote, he compared you to a really bad impression of Barack Obama. What is your response to that?
Is that what he said? That's great. I love how we get the real-time quotes here. I mean, look, I don't know. Barack Obama was probably our most gifted orator of my time, so it's kind of a weird insult, I guess. But look, I'll say this about J.D. Vance. It is real hard being honest with the American people when you're not being honest with yourself. J.D. Vance is a total phony baloney. He is the most inorganic candidate I think I have ever seen on the national stage. He doesn't know what he believes, and that is why it is impossible for him to articulate a coherent message to the American people, because he doesn't believe it. So if he wants to sling insults in my direction, which I'm not even sure is an insult, let him do it. That's fine. Bring it on. I'll be ready for whatever the hell J.D. Vance throws my direction.
So as usual, Vance goes with surface insults towards potential Harris running mates, opening himself up to being called out for his extremely fake presentation of himself. So he goes with being robotic with everything from how he sits to how he tells stories of his relatable life, instead of focusing on the issues that Shapiro would bring to a Democratic ticket. I mean, he's got a pretty bad record on his staunch support for Israel's ongoing aggression and massacre of Palestinians, to pushing for school vouchers in his state. But Republicans' hands are tied on Shapiro's downsides because their dream is to go even further on those same issues. So while Vance is stuck explaining whether or not he hates women or only dislikes them, people are paying attention to his really bad answers.
Take a look here. J.D. Vance's net favorable ratings. Look, he was already the least liked VP nominee coming out of convention. You can see that AP Newark earlier this month, mid-July, -5 points. The ABC News Ipsos poll, -6 points. But look at this week. So we basically have this timeline where we're able to show in very recent polling data, look at J.D. Vance's net favorable rating in AP Newark, dropping by 8 points to -13 points. How about ABC News Ipsos, dropping to -15 points? So it seems that the attack lines against J.D. Vance are working. And one of those big attack lines, of course, is the idea that he is weird. And it's definitely being increasingly searched with his name and obviously other things associated with Republicans.
Mid-July, a lot of people didn't know J.D. Vance.
Correct.
This week, people do know J.D. Vance.
Bingo.
But sometimes, isn't it in politics, that just once you get on a ticket, once you are no longer labeled a contender for, but you are the whatever, your favorability drops.
That may be true if we were to go months into advance, right? But if you look at folks like Sarah Palin, you look at folks like Dan Quayle, folks who went on to sort of VP infamy,
yeah,
all of them had net favorability ratings at +10 or better. The fact that he is so disliked so early on, to me, suggests that there's something unique about J.D. Vance. And it's not just the weird thing, but I think the weird attack line is absolutely having an impact. Folks just have a visceral dislike for him, as we see in these numbers.
Vance is already in the company of Dan Quayle and Sarah Palin. But there's still something unique about his inability to get people to like him. It's not like fake politicians are a new thing, though. In fact, it's always been more likely that our elected leaders are, but they've always been able to hide it. In this information era, everyone can easily get recorded history of Vance being 2 and maybe 3 or 4-faced when it comes to his principles. I guess he figures his only shot is hoping that Harris makes a bad decision too.
Take a look at the national number, though, and you get a sense of this. Remember, before the first debate with Biden and Trump, Trump was leading by close to 3 points or above 3 points, depending on when you looked at it. Trump today in the Real Clear Politics average is leading by 1.2%, 1.2 points. There's an outlier in there, the poll that gives him a 5-point lead. Without that outlier, he's leading by less than 1%, 0.8. In fact, if you look at it, there were 5 polls in the Real Clear Politics average that occurred before the 25th of July. Trump leads in all 5 of those. Of the 5 polls that have been held since the 26th of July, he leads in only 2. She leads in 3. So I fully expect that the momentum she has is gonna carry her through, unless it's a disastrous vice presidential choice.
They just might be holding on to hope that Shapiro or Waltz or Buttigieg or whoever Harris chooses will have some devastating discussion surface like every other day, kind of like this one.
Should a woman be forced to carry a child to term after she has been the victim of incest or rape?
Look, my view on this has been very clear, and I think the question betrays a certain presumption that's wrong. It's not whether a woman should be forced to bring a child to term, it's whether a child should be allowed to live, even though the circumstances of that child's birth are somehow inconvenient or a problem to the society.
Yeah, man, I still can't believe that Trump world didn't either look into the guy that they chose or thought that all this extremely unpopular videos of him regarding women wouldn't be replayed the second that he stepped in front of a podium. But then again, it's worked out well for Donald Trump.
I'll tell you truthfully, we don't have tremendous fights. We should have world record-setting fights, but we really don't. We get along very well, and there's not a lot of disagreement because ultimately Ivana does exactly as I tell her to do.
See, wait a minute.
Male chauvinist.
Right, men? Is that right? Huh?
Maybe Vance has done something good for the country. Maybe he's jolted people to realize that since he's championed so many vicious anti-women and anti-American points of view, that his boss, who's got the same issues, chose him because he's the same kind of person. Did y'all hear what he had to say about Republican Governor Brian Kemp because his wife isn't supporting him?
Atlanta is like a killing field, and your governor ought to get off his ass and do something about it. But Kemp doesn't want to end it because he's a bad guy, he's a disloyal guy, and he's a very average governor. Little Brian Kemp. Bad guy. I've had you up to here, Brian. I've had you up to here. He's a bad guy, and he's not doing this country a good service. So I did these 2 big rallies, and he won. He did win. He won by like 2%. And his wife looked at me and said, "Thank you, sir. We'll never, ever be able to repay you for what you did." He's the most disloyal guy I think I've ever seen. But think of the wife. "We can never repay you for what you've done, sir. We could have never won." And now she said 2 weeks ago that I will not endorse him because he hasn't earned my endorsement. I haven't earned her endorsement. I have nothing to do with her.